Hello and welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. I'm your host, Carl Tsar. Today, I have back on my show my old friend and old guest of mine, Jerry from China. How are you, Jerry?
It's a bit strange to call me Jerry from China, but yes, I'm Jerry in China. But yeah, I'm well. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite. It is great. You were actually one of the very first people to ever interview me a long, long time ago.
Yeah, it's that was oh my god, it's almost like 6 years, right?
Yes, 4 or
Yeah,
5 years ago, at least 5 years. Yeah,
yeah. I think it was before COVID even.
yep, it was.
It's been it's been quite some time. So the reason I have you back on the show, Jerry, is because recently, by the way, a very nice background picture of a mosque. That
Thanks.
this goes along with because we are in the month of Ramadan, so so happy Ramadan, everybody, and also happy Chinese New Year. Like just this year, everything falls on the same calendar. You know, like Chinese New Year, Ramadan, they all starts around the same time.
Yeah.
So the reason I asked you back, Jerry, is because recently the UK Prime Minister Starmer has visited China, and you are originally from UK, and I call you Jerry from China, but as you live in China now, but originally you are from UK. So I like to get your takes on Starmer's visit to China, amidst the current geopolitical shift, with Trump is cranking up pressure on Europe. It was this trip because do you think there's some sort of a shift in the UK foreign policy toward China? Does the Starmer visit maybe signal some kind of shift?
I think there is a shift. I'm not 100% certain that it's a shift towards China. It's a shift away from America for certain. The UK government has literally just denied permission for the Americans to use British bases if they're going to attack Iran. So there's something shifting there internally. There's also and I'm sure we'll talk about this, the Epstein files, which are causing Starmer to need to distance himself from them, with the former Prince Andrew and the Mandelson case, both of which have caused Starmer embarrassment when he returned back to the UK. I do see that the UK has, my personal experience in talking to friends, and I don't have that many friends in the UK. I left there in '87, so it's quite rare that I kind of catch up with anybody from there. But talking to people that I know in the UK, they're feeling the same thing. The UK has lost its momentum. It lost it probably at the end of the Second World War, but now it's taken until this long for many people to realize just how bad things are. I know that individually lots of people were struggling, but I mean, as a collective country, they're starting to realize they don't have the European Union anymore. And that was a big mistake. I think a lot of people realize that. They've got internal turmoil with the Reform Party to the extreme right, and then the Greens who are coming in from the left. And then you've got these two mainstream parties, Labour and Conservative, which are basically, as I think George Galloway calls them, two cheeks of the same ass. They're basically, he uses that to describe America, Democrats and Republicans, but I think it fits just as well there. You've basically got this mainstream political, which are left or right, but neither of them are left or right. They're both very, very central, and both to the right of central. Keir Starmer is no representative of the working people. And the country is made up of working people. It always has been, despite being a global leader with the British Empire, despite having its lords and ladies, its dukes and duchesses. It is very much a country made up of working class people who now realize that they are screwed. And the only way to unscrew themselves is to have global recognition, but also global relationships. And China is the country to have the global relationship with. If you're going to get anything, if you're going to start or kickstart your economy again, it has to be in Asia, at least, an ASEAN. And they are actually involved in the CTPP, whatever it's called, the Cross Trans Pacific Partnership.
That was basically got transformed from the original TPP, right? Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was proposed by Obama, but got nuked by Trump first term because Trump has not don't want anything to do with it. So now it became this long acronym. Like basically, it's like TPP without America, but except that now, it's quite interesting. But when I saw Starmer's visit in China, I saw a lot of Chinese people clamoring to take photos with Starmer, which is, I think, for a lot of UK people, quite startling because they were probably shocked that Starmer could be popular anywhere. I mean, he definitely seems to be more popular in China than he was back home in UK.
That's true.
But there is, I think the reason for that is because for the Chinese people, it doesn't matter whether it's Starmer or any UK politician. They don't see them as, they see them just as representative of their country. They see Starmer as a representative of the country UK. And despite, the history of opium war and stuff, the modern people in modern China actually have quite warm feelings toward UK, so this is what they're expressing. They're not expressing their approval about actual performance of Starmer per se in UK itself, because that had nothing to do with them. But there is a bit of backlash, though, among British media and some of the pundits about Starmer's China visit. Say, how could you do this? How can you, try to go? You are trying to appease a dictatorship, etc., etc. Where do you think that come from? Like, why was there such hostility toward kind of repairing relationship with China?
You've got half a dozen people in the political arena. Some of them are actually members of parliament. Tom Tugendhat. You've got Luke de Pulford. You've got all of these people who are connected to the National Endowment for Democracy. They pretend the IPAC, the International Parliamentary Alliance on China, and to be a member of this, you must be an elected member of a democratic parliament somewhere. And they have offices. They have people from all around the world, including Australia, New Zealand, and European countries as well. But these people. They are basically paid for by, their hatred is paid for by Washington. The National Endowment for Democracy set this up, pays for it. It comes out of Washington. There is no question in my mind that these people hate China. If they're not paid to hate China, they would hate China anyway, whether they're paid or not. So you've got this, and most of the vocal opposition is coming from those people. It's not coming from ordinary people. I think ordinary people don't care that China and Britain, or I'm not talking about politicians, ordinary people, not ordinary politicians, because most politicians are so badly misinformed about China. They still think they still think that there's Uyghurs being incarcerated by the millions. They still think that Hong Kong democracy has been eroded. They still think that Tibet was invaded. They think these things because they don't know. And they're being told this by people in very high positions. Those people in very high positions are being paid to say this, but they would probably say it for free anyway, because they just hate China. They're just racist bigots who dislike China. Now, this picture behind me is a mosque. It's in Gansu, and I can say for absolute certainty there is no Uyghur genocide, there is no Uyghur oppression, there's no Muslim oppression, there's no lack of religious freedoms in China, there is no lack of freedom of speech. There are rules and regulations around all these things, but there is no lack of them. So, when I know China, and I can say this, and many people, now that the UK has got its 30-day visa free for its citizens, they can come and have a look for themselves. Now, it's a 10 or 12-hour flight from the UK. You arrive in, say, Guangzhou, for example, and you're still 5 hours flying time away from Xinjiang. So it's not that easy to visit. and this is what the BBC will tell us. It's very difficult to visit there. Well, yeah, it's difficult because it's remote. It's a long way from anywhere, and it takes a long time to go there. It took me 57 days to get there, but that was a different story. Yeah, I did it on a bike.
On a bicycle.
Twice.
It's not a high-speed train. It's not a high-speed train. It's a bicycle.
The high-speed. The first time I went there was on the old green train, and it still it was still 50-something hours. So that gives you an indication how far away it is. You're still in China, and we weren't even at that stage. We only went to Urumqi, the capital. You're still 600 kilometers from the border when you're in Urumqi. So yeah, it's a big place, and it is difficult to get to. But let's for a moment say, let's hypothetically say we know that's not true. Hypothetically, okay? I know it's not, but let's talk to an English person, to the English audience, and say, if that's not true, if it's not true, do you think China is bad? And they say, well, yeah, but what about Hong Kong? Okay, now if I can tell you, if I can prove to you that in Hong Kong, the Chinese government has not stepped outside of the boundary of the joint declaration made by Deng Xiaoping and Margaret Thatcher back in 1987, the joint declaration of how Hong Kong would be managed. If I can prove to you that that is exactly what China is doing, would you accept that that's not the case? Yeah, probably. So now, hypothetically, the two things that the Brits really feel there's a problem with in China can be eliminated. Now, what's the problem with China? Oh, they're overcapacity. In what respect are they overcapacity? They're selling every car that they're building. They're not building more cars and selling them cheaply. They're selling them cheaply because they're building more cars. It goes the other way. There is no threat from China. To the ordinary people, there is no threat from China. 30 years ago, in my hometown of Sunderland in the UK, Nissan arrived and they built a huge plant. It was massive. It was one of the biggest factories that the UK had. And it survived there for over 20 years. It's gone now, I believe. But that helped the British economy enormously. Now, why can't BYD do the same thing? Because they're Chinese, because they can spy on us. Well, the country that is spying on you is not China. The country that is threatening you is not China. The country that is stealing your resources is not China. China wants to add to your resources. China wants to invest in your resources. Now, once we start to see that, and I think Keir Starmer can see that, I'm fairly certain he should be able to see that, but I'm fairly certain he's got people in his advisory team. Now, he's just lost his main advisor, Morgan McSweeney, but he's got people in his advisory team who I'm sure will be telling him, this is all rubbish about China. You know that, don't you? And that's probably the advice that he's getting. But of course, he cannot, it's political suicide to stand up on stage and say, there is no Uyghur genocide, there is no Uyghur oppression. That would be political suicide for him. Immediately, the BBC would slam down on him. Everything that's owned by Murdoch would slam down on him. And of course, that's the end of his political career is pretty much over. He walked back from here into a storm. He had to fire not only his chief of staff, but his chief of communications. He's had to fire just a few months ago, he fired the US ambassador, the British ambassador to the United States, who happened to be a personal friend, who happens to have been in the Epstein files several times, and who happens now to have been arrested. So, we're talking about a really difficult situation for him to get over, and he should resign. However, he's probably being allowed to stay on because at the next election, they will get whitewashed. They will lose so many seats and they need that scapegoat. That's the only reason I think that he's survived as long as he's survived. He'll stay there until there's a local election in Gorton, which I think is in Manchester or Liverpool. I'm not sure. It's in that northwest area in the next few days, just later this week. And when that happens, if Labour has suffered considerably, it may be time then for Starmer to just pack his bags and leave number 10. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I saw some survey says he's like the most unpopular British politician in recent history, or the most unpopular prime minister, which says something because you have people like Liz Truss, like
Boris Johnson. I mean, these guys were. I mean, this is a record bar that just keeps getting lower. Yeah. At the time, Boris Johnson was the most unpopular prime minister. Then, of course, came Liz Truss, who lettuce Liz. She has the shelf life of a lettuce, 19 days, I think it was. I mean, it takes a little bit of doing to reach that bar. But yeah, he does look pretty unpopular. He has made some very, very serious decisions, personal decisions, and he got caught out with a little gift problem when he was first in power. Turned out that one of the donors was giving him the suits he was wearing and stuff like that. These kinds of things don't bode well. Peter Mandelson, who had to be fired, Lord Peter Mandelson, I believe he is still technically a lord, although he's resigned from the House of Lords. I don't think the title can be taken away without an act of Parliament, and that hasn't happened yet. But he has resigned. He's a former member of the House of Lords, so now they're going to have to find someone to replace him. And that's caused him a big problem because Peter Mandelson had two resigning events in his career based around corruption. So this is a guy who's become extremely powerful and has had to resign twice in the past. This is his third resignation. I think it might be his last because he's 72 years old now, but I don't know if he still pulls power. I don't know if he still has the strings of power inside of Parliament. Certainly he had them for a while, and one of his proteges was a guy called Morgan McSweeney, who became the chief of staff and basically was running the government for Keir Starmer.
The funny thing about Mandelson is that instead, I just saw a mainstream media reporting trying to link that to China, right? They say, oh, we established Epstein's connection to China because apparently Epstein was trying to get into the Chinese market, but he has no connection, so he had to work through Mandelson to get some Chinese connection. The Chinese connection they found for Epstein was this Hong Kong billionaire, Desmond Shum, who has been basically on the run from the Chinese authorities since 2015. So that is Epstein's Chinese connection, quote unquote. I mean, I'm surprised they even bothered to do a story on that. It's basically a nothing burger.
Well, of course, it's a nothing burger. Everything about China is a nothing burger. The BBC just create these things, and it's amazing to watch the mental gymnastics that they go through to prove China is bad, when in fact it was China who rejected Epstein's visa. It was the guy he was dealing with is a corrupt criminal. He's on the run. So yeah, China's bad because they made that Hong Kong businessman run away. Yeah.
That in fact it's because China rejected Epstein visa. That's why Epstein went to Mandelson for help, for consultation on how he can get to China. So it's the same. It's the same story about corrupted Western elite. Their networks. But yet they're trying to tell the public somehow Epstein is an intelligence asset of Russia or China, when the biggest elephant in the room, nobody is willing to touch, which is like the Mossad connection. Like no mainstream media is willing to touch it, even though it's like right there staring you in the face. But that's the kind of world we live in right now, unfortunately. This is why I think a lot of China stories is actually distractions from from like the Western and Israeli atrocities. I remember, you brought up Xinjiang. I remember back in 2018, when Israel was bombing, because Israel has always been bombing Gaza.
Yep.
They put out a lot of articles in New York Times, Wall Street Journal about how Xinjiang is the world's largest open air prison. And so if you type that in Google search bar, those article will come up. When everybody know the world's largest open air prison is Gaza, right? So it's like very blatant attempt to gaming the search engine. So to kind of they just put up a whole bunch of stuff So
Mm.
they don't want you to look at Gaza.
Yeah,
Let's look at
it's
China.
still
Let's look at
going
Xinjiang.
on, Carl.
Yeah.
There's a girl who's riding around China at the moment on a motorbike, a Dutch girl, and she raised the point. I'm not following her because it's annoying to me to watch people like this. But somebody raised the point. She's wandering around Turfan in Xinjiang, and saying this is the place where the Uyghurs come for their Hajj because they're not allowed to have passports. What? Where the hell did that piece of information come from? They're not allowed to have passports. I know Uyghurs who have passports. I know several Uyghurs who've educated overseas. It's just really weird that people come up with this kind of statements. Well, they're not allowed to have passports. Who told her this? Who told her that Uyghurs are not allowed to have passports?
I don't know if you know Luke, who is also British.
I've actually met Luke in Xinjiang. Yes, I do know Luke.
Yes. Yeah, it's a nice British chap. He's he got his PhD in AI, in medical AI in China, and he fell in love with Xinjiang. He's while he was waiting to get his diploma, he's hanging out in Xinjiang teaching English. So I met with him in Xinjiang in Urumqi on my trip last year. And he told me a lot of students that he teaches English to went abroad. That's the whole point. They're learning English.
Yeah. That's why he's teaching them English, so they can go abroad and study more. I've got the same thing. I used to be an IELTS examiner, the International English Language Testing System. And I had many Uyghurs come through. And why are they getting an IELTS test? The only reason you need an IELTS test or an IELTS score is because you're going overseas. That's what happens. I mean, I've tested, thousands of people, but probably dozens of them would have been Uyghurs. Tested all over China. We travel a lot when we're IELTS examining. I'd sometimes go to Beijing. I went to Chongqing a couple of times. Most of the time, because I was based in Guangzhou, I was in the south, Nanchang, Fuzhou, Xiamen, Changsha. They're the northernmost places I would go to. But I went to Beijing a couple of times. I went to Chongqing a couple of times. Chongqing has a lot, and Chengdu as well would have a lot of Uyghurs coming down. They're the closest places to get the test for them because there's no test center out there in Urumqi, as far as I'm aware. If there is, I would have volunteered to go there too. But I love the place. I mean, it is 5 hours away by plane. It's 20-something hours by high-speed train.
Well, it's five hours away by plane from where you are, because you live in you live in like the southern tip of China. You're just above Hong Kong, because you are like the furthest part from Xinjiang. I think it's about like 3.5 hours from like Shanghai or something like that.
Okay, from the East Coast. 4 to 5 hours from most of China, but there's once you get into Chongqing, where you're from, it's not that far at all.
It's a lot closer. It's a lot closer. I was. It's a huge place, as you mentioned, because last year I went with Pepe Escobar. We spent.
I was following you.
We spent about 2 weeks just in the southern part of Xinjiang. We didn't even go to northern Xinjiang. We drove. Our driver told us we drove like 35,000 kilometers. Wrong. I mean, that's only a southern part portion.
You never left the region. It's not a province. It's an autonomous region, but it has a provincial status. You've never leave. I've done the same thing. I mean, I've cycled about 5,000 kilometers in there. I think Fernando Munoz Bernal has driven 60,000 or something around that. It's just so vast. It's the size of France and Spain together. It is very, very big. And down that southern area, did you cross the Taklamakan? Because
yes, we did. We drove right across. We drove right across Taklamakan to Kashgar, to Khotan actually, to Khotan, and then from Khotan we went to Kashgar. But back to UK, China-UK relations. Do you think the Starmer's visit made an impact? I mean, like is there a positive impact on the UK-China relationship, or has it have any result?
For sure. China has never. I don't think China will ever forget the golden age when Xi Jinping and Cameron drank beer together, and everybody talked about how things were reset. That is how the people that I know here are viewing Starmer's visit. It was a very positive thing. The first thing that happened when they got back was that the media started reporting the 30-day visa-free for British citizens, and they preempted that. They said it has been granted when it hadn't, and it was given favorable, actually the words were positive consideration. Xi Jinping actually said this. He was cited as saying, we're going to give this positive consideration. And that was what the Global Times, the People's Daily, Guanming, Ribao, the media that I read in China was all saying that. And the media I was looking at in the UK said, oh, they're giving us 30 days. So if you turned up at the airport to fly to China, you would have been very disappointed. You wouldn't have got on a flight. So they were preempting that, and it did finally come. It came quite quickly, and it's confirmed that the Canadian and the British citizens are now getting visa-free 30-day entry. So that's a very positive thing. And I said in just before that, I made a short video which said Britain needs to prove its intent. It needs to show some action. So obviously there was some action there. And it wasn't just whiskey. As far as I can read, working out, there's a lot of media coverage. One thing that did happen was the tariffs on whiskey being imported into China were halved. Scotch whiskey, that is, not Irish whiskey. Not sure why. Maybe Ireland. Well, Ireland has I think Ireland's got a different relationship anyway. Not a free trade agreement, but a very strong relationship with China, and that's part of European Union as well, not the British Isles. So anyway, the whiskey was one thing. AstraZeneca they're a British a pharmaceutical company that has a base in Britain, and they are going to invest quite a lot of money, I think 115 billion, into the China pharmaceutical industry. And that's a very big positive thing for both sides. China is always looking for overseas investment coming into China. But now then we get the story that, oh, Chinese investment is declined because net investment, China goes out more. So China is now investing in the third world, in the global south, as people like to call it. So investing in Latin America, investing in Africa. All of these things they're showing that China is improving the world more than it's improving the imperial world, if you want, the global north. So there were very positive things. I think about 58 business leaders came with Starmer, and many of them stayed behind after Starmer left. So the 3 days of meetings that Starmer had were positive. There were a lot of good things came out of it. And then Starmer went away, and he went into a storm of bad news. He had bad media coverage. He had bad news. All of a sudden, buses were fire hazards, and electric buses built by BYD are bombs. They're mobile bombs that have trigger switches and all kinds of things. All this ridiculous media headlines just because Washington didn't like that. But then, of course, a few days later, Donald Trump says, I'm going to China on the 29th of March. Okay, so what's wrong with England doing it or Britain doing it? This is what really impresses me most of all, the hypocrisy of it, because America are funding anti-China rhetoric at the same time as saying we need China. We need to be at the table with China. They're not on the menu, they're at the table.
That's funny because exact same thing happened when Carney went to China. Then there was a lot of online pundits saying, "Oh, how could you do that? How could you do trade with a dictatorship and all that? Why are you sabotaging our relationship with United States by doing trade with China?" I'm like, are you guys crazy? U.S. is still China's third largest trading partner, and Donald Trump is going to China in April. What are you talking about? And China is not threatening to annexing Canada. No. China is not tweeting out from or Greenland. And China is not tweeting out, on social media on how, I just saw a ridiculous White House tweet, they show a cartoon of American eagle sinking its claw on the Canadian goose. It's like, This is just a childish level of antics right now. And there's still people saying, oh, why are you moving closer to China? I mean, come on. But I think you are onto something about the IPAC. What's the acronym for?
The Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China.
Yeah, it's actually IPAC is actually co-founded by Marco Rubio. This now the Secretary of State of the United States.
I think he was once a member of it. I don't know if he still is. I guess now he's Secretary of State. He's not an elected member of the Congress or Senate. So yeah, I guess he has to step aside from that. But he was actually a member of it for sure. That's really interesting because now he controls the purse strings that pay for it. And I don't think there's going to be any doubt they'll continue to have NED funding. They also get NDI, which is the National Democratic Institute. They have Taiwan. Hello Taiwan is one of their, and Hello Taiwan is funded by the National Endowment for Democracy. So there's some sort of circular referencing going on here where a Taiwanese association pays for this anti-China association, but it gets its money from the same source. And then in their website they actually say this: we do not take any government's money, and they're taking it all from the NED. How does that work? We do not take government money from governments. Well, okay. So who approves the NED's budget? Oh, that's Congress. What are Congress? Congress of the Government of America. Oh, okay. It's a very long bow that they draw to say that they're to prove they are independent, which they obviously clearly are not. Lord Alston and what's her name? The lady from Sheffield Hallam University. These people are very, very much vocal in anti-China, and Canada's got them too. Australia has them, so does New Zealand. Basically, the Five Eyes, but they also have a few inside of Europe from Holland and a few other places. Germany's got a few, Holland's got a few. The German Chancellor is coming here tomorrow, I think, Wednesday. He'll be here. So Germany is coming here. France was just here. Finland was just here. Britain was just here. Canada was just here. And that's not to mention the half a dozen or more other leaders who are of such... this not to be rude about them, but they're less significant countries that are sending people here. Xi Jinping sent a message, and they sent delegations to the Africa Forum, which happened just a week or so ago. And that happens every second year in China, and 53 of 54 countries come here. So there's massive things going on. The Africa issue, 53 of 54 African countries have basically now got a free trade agreement with unilateral free trade. So they have free trade into China. China doesn't necessarily get free trade into them. So 55, I think, or 56 countries now have visa-free visits to China. So basically what we're seeing here is the exact opposite of the United States. And UK needs to pick a side. Now, China never has said to any company or corporation, if you deal with America, you can't deal with us. But America does. If you deal with China, you can't deal with us. You deal with Russia, you can't deal with us. If you don't support Israel, you can't deal with us. China doesn't put those restrictions on anyone. So I think that's why more countries are leaning towards China. And it's not a case of us or them for China. It's a case of we want multipolarity. We want equality throughout the world. And once we have that, then America's power becomes less important. Marco Rubio is famous about 3 or 4 years ago for saying, if we don't sanction these people now, we'll never have the power to sanction them because there will be alternatives for them. And there are. The CIPS is taking over from the SWIFT system. The Russian ruble and the rupee and the RMB are all taking over from the dollars. So, there's a lot of movement towards China that China is naturally attracting because it is a more open society. Strangely enough, they're still calling it authoritarian, but it's a much more open society than the US currently is under its current government.
Yeah, which is crazy because recently during the Olympics, a lot of MAGA crowd online, they're really flipping out over, you know, Eileen Gu,
Yeah,
playing for China, which is, like it's really crazy. Like this is sports. Like athletes switch nationality all the time. There's actually a American girl who was educated in Stanford who hold dual citizenship in UK
yeah.
and US. Zoe Atkin, who just recently won a medal
She got
for
bronze.
UK.
Yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, nobody's
don't
and
mention
then
it.
nobody is talking about
Yeah,
her because but
but they
Eileen Gu,
say,
no, that's not acceptable.
well, the UK is not an authoritarian, dictatorial, genocidal government. That's the problem. Yet that's exactly what the UK are. That, historically they're genocidal. There's no getting away from that. I mean, we're kind of making a joke about it, but historically the Brits have genocided. Well, not necessarily mass murdered is probably a better word rather than genocide, but they have mass murdered many in many different places. They did genocide in Australia for sure. They did everything they could to wipe out the indigenous population of Australia. They absolutely did that there. India has seen mass starvation. These are not genocides because it's not a case of trying to kill or remove that entire population. This is a mass event where tens of thousands, if not millions, of people starve. The US is doing it to Cuba, did it to Venezuela, is doing it to Iran, has done it to China, these are genocidal actions. If you want to use the word genocide correctly, these are genocidal actions. So, yeah, to say that Eileen Gu
those
is,
countries are and those are countries ruled by pedophilic elite, as we know from the Epstein file reveal. I mean,
yeah,
like
the Epstein
it's
files
really.
still need a lot of investigation. I'm not trying to diminish them at all, but I'm kind of evidence based, and the evidence is not all there. I'm not saying didn't happen. I'm saying it needs investigating. And I've been trying to. I'm not trying to defend Andrew, the former prince. I'm just trying to say because he was arrested on these charges that he misused public office because he's been arrested and he's being investigated for an offence which occurred in the United Kingdom, related to the United Kingdom. The arrest, and the same as Mandelson, he apparently went to very important meetings. He was given very important documents, and those documents were passed to a third party from a different country, the United States in this case, Epstein, which may be, if you want to argue, it could be Russia, could be Israel, or it could be America, but certainly whatever happened, they were given to a hostile government, hostile to the United Kingdom. And that's what he's being charged with. And people are saying, well, yeah, they're not even mentioning the pedophilia. Well, first of all, he paid 12 million to put that to bed, or his mother did and his brother did. They paid 12 million to put that to bed in a court case. Secondly, the evidence against him is extremely difficult to prove. Not saying it's not there. It's extremely difficult to prove, particularly now that the only witness is dead. So, I mean, there are basically three witnesses to this who could say that this did or didn't happen. Ghislaine Maxwell is one. She's possibly still in custody. Epstein is another.
Not suicided yet. Maxwell has not suicided
yet. No, but she appears to be talking, or she appears to be walking around Montreal, and he's walking around Israel. I love social media. You don't know what's true and what's not. But I mean, if we're going back to facts, the fact-based information, there is very, very much a lot of difficulties to prove that Andrew did something wrong on that island to that girl. Now,
this is
what
why,
other evidence
this is why
they have needs investigating. Sorry?
This is why we need a full release of the Epstein file. Right now, they only release still a small fraction. And the White House is trying to say, okay, we're done. We did our duty. No. You got to release the full file and not like heavily redacted as they are right now.
Yeah, it looks like they're redacting the names of the guilty, not the names of the innocent, which
Exactly.
seems to me to be a very, very wrong thing to be doing. We're talking about 3 million pages there, and yeah, that's a small part of it, apparently. So yeah, we're going to see a lot more. I mean, I'm not diminishing any of this at all. What I'm saying is it's extremely difficult to prove. It's very easy to misinterpret something. Do they really eat babies? I haven't seen anyone say, yeah, we had a lovely lunch yesterday, I had baby's intestines or whatever. No, I mean, there's a lot of comments that could be interpreted as that. And that's why investigation and openness is the way to go. Now, of course, if you're trying to hide something, then what's the best way of hiding something? You put it into, if you want to hide a tree, you put it in the middle of a forest. So they're going to be releasing stuff that needs interpretation. And now they're saying some of these documents have been altered. Some of them are false. Some of them are clearly not true. So what they've done, they've released 3 million pages. And now they're saying people have hacked into the database and changed things. So now all the evidence is tainted. It's going to be almost impossible to get a conviction from any of these allegations. Andrew will never, ever be convicted, in my opinion. He'll be charged, he'll be put in front of the court. He cannot be convicted because the evidence has been so badly tainted by media, by social media, by people even like us talking about it. What we're doing there is we're preventing him from getting a fair trial. And that is the very basis of the system of justice. So I think he's going to get away with it. Whatever he has done, he'll probably get away with. And they're going to say at the end of the day, it's impossible for us to prove what is actually true and what is rumored to be true. That's the problem.
I think that's by design, though. I think that's by design, including like releasing half-truth together with the other files to confuse you and to say, oh, hey, like not everything we really see was a fact. Some of them just speculation. It's just wild rumor. It's not. That's exactly not really
what's going to happen. You've got hundreds and hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of pages of interpreted information. What actually happened here is not the same as what they said happened here. There's one of these where you tried to buy my baby. Really? Tried to buy a baby? I don't believe that. This kind of thing. They really, words that we write. We speak euphemistically. We speak metaphorically. We speak idiomatically. We have different ways of saying things in different cultures. And people speaking English not as their first language will make some mistakes. That's not what I meant to say. You're interpreting it the wrong way. That kind of thing is going to create enough doubt, and it is by design. I'm certain it's by design, because there is a massive corruption scandal. Now, this is insider trading, for sure. This is industrial espionage, for sure. This is possibly espionage at a national level with either Mossad is the most likely, Russia is probably not the least likely, because China is the least likely, but Russia and Israel are almost certainly involved in this. But prove it. Try proving that from the information that's been released. You can't. And as evidentiary value, this is crap. Circumstantial evidence, hearsay evidence, it's all crap. It's not going to stand up in a court. So that's probably why this has all been released, and why Pam Bondi can sit there and go, yeah, I don't care what your questions are. I don't have enough evidence to act. And Kash Patel will say the same thing. I don't have enough evidence to act. And it's true. They don't have enough evidence to act because they've tainted it. By design? I guess so.
We also don't have enough evidence to say Kash Patel's girlfriend is actually a Mossad asset. We just don't have evidence. We just don't have evidence. But anyway, okay. So I'm glad there's some good coming out of Starmer's visit to China, and I'd like to remind people when we're talking about golden age of China-UK relationship, that's only 10 years ago. That wasn't that long ago. I'm old enough to remember that.
Me too.
and there was a time when Xi Jinping was like pub crawling in London. I mean, like, this just goes to show kind of how far the media environment has been poisoned in the last 10 years. Like the whole, China, like the whole anti-China vibe has taken over in the last 10 years since the Trump first term, which coincide with the Trump first term, 2016. I mean, it predates that, but it really got really worse from 2016 and onwards.
Do you follow Professor Warwick Powell?
Oh yeah. He's a regular on my show now. I meet up with him every other Wednesday. Yeah.
Okay, so great. I haven't seen that. I didn't know that. But Warwick and I are friends as well. We've actually met in Beijing. And he made an interesting point about maybe a year, 18 months ago, that the money they've spent, the massive, and it is billions of dollars, denigrating China, has really been wasted. Because when you talk to ordinary Australians, when you talk to ordinary Brits, when you talk to ordinary Americans, normal people with an education of any sort, they're all saying, well, China's not all that bad. I can't see any big problems. There's no threat to me, no threat to us. So effectively, all of this money has been spent to try and make China into an evil Iran, an evil North Korea, an evil Cuba, and it's all failing. And now the rest of the world are starting to look at this and go, I'm not buying this anymore. Social media has been great for this. And people like yourself.
But Jerry, all that money went into pocket of someone. Those people who got the money, for them, it did make a difference. I mean, like, this is how the Western system works now. A lot of it's by grift. It's not even designed to work. It's designed to keep the system of grift going. So all these grifters get their Mac mansions in Virginia or or Bahamas.
Yep. Yeah. Benedict Rogers, Luke de Pulford, they're doing very, very well, getting good salaries, creating myths. That's all they're doing, creating and perpetuating myths. I'd invite them to come. They can't. Benedict Rogers was actually banned from Hong Kong a few years ago. He flew in from Thailand, got turned around and sent home. I think these guys, some of these people will not be allowed to enter China. I'm fairly certain on that. And that's a big question. When the visa-free is operating, what happens if that guy just turns up and walks into the country? They know who he is. He's red flagged, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, looks like right now, United States is the only one of the 5 Anglo-I country that don't get visa-free to China. UK, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, they all have 30 days visa free now.
Well, there's another thing that it may happen because it usually coincides with Australia got it when Li Chang went there. Britain got it when Keir Starmer came here. So it coincides with the visit. And Trump is coming here. He hasn't been here for a long time. It's
it's a long time. Yeah, since his first term, so almost 10 years. Yeah.
So he's coming here in 3 or 4 weeks' time. When he arrives here, maybe this will be part of it. But I think in order to get this, there needs to be some positive moves seen by China, not just positive promises. Because every time there's these meetings that go on, the promises that come out are actually flawed promises. The last one in Korea, Donald Trump and Xi Jinping met. Xi Jinping's department, the State Council Information Office, put out that it was a positive meeting, and America put out all sorts of things with statistics and figures that they're going to buy 20 million tons of soybeans this year, which they didn't do. It's now into the next year, and they're going to buy 30 million this year or 25 million, and they haven't said that they will or not. China didn't say this at all. Where did this come from? It looks like somebody just made it up and said,
it was
we want you to, in the meeting, we want you to buy our soybeans. Yeah, okay, we'll give that some consideration. Okay, they said they're going to buy our soybeans. And now when they don't buy soybeans, something goes wrong. The other one, the big one, was the lie. And it is a lie. It's an absolute lie. The press is saying China stalled the restrictions on rare earths. They did not stall the restrictions on rare earths. They stalled for 1 year only the restrictions that they imposed on the 12th of October on rare earth elements. So all the other restrictions on rare earth elements are still in place, still happening. And if you want to get rare earth elements out of China now, you need to be registered. You need to be an end user certificated user, or you need to be a supplier. There are no middlemen anymore. There's just end users, and those end users can use agencies, but the agencies don't get to touch the rare earths. They get sent direct. So there's new regulations. Hundreds of people have been employed to make sure that these regulations are met, and there's no back doors, there's no container loads of stuff going out that shouldn't be going out. So they've got hundreds of people employed just to do that. So when America says, oh, they delayed, they are giving themselves a bit of face. They are not giving themselves truth. So there's no truth in that aspect of it. So we're going to see stories coming out. And I always, as soon as I see an American media release that says this is what happened, I go to the State Council Information Office or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to verify the Chinese version of what happened. And invariably, they are very different.
Good point. I mean, as American, I can tell you we're pretty used to a government official lying through their teeth. I mean, that's just normal in the United States. That's how you get elected into the office. True, yeah, but true. It's sad. Okay, that's great. Is there what any future project? Is there any future project you're involved with right now, Jerry, while in China?
I have two projects that I'm working on at the moment. One is a cycle ride. I mean, if any of your people don't know who I am, I cycle around China, but I've cycled from Guangdong to Xinjiang. I've cycled from Harbin back to Guangdong. Wow. I've done Xinjiang back to Guangdong.
Not in the winter, right? Not in the winter time, right?
Yeah, I'm retired now. I can afford that time. The next trip is from Hohhot in Inner Mongolia. I cycled to Hohhot last year and left some gear there. This year we're going to fly up there with our bikes. I have our bikes shipped up there, and then we're going to cycle back via Qinghai Lake. That's one project, and I've actually been asked to write a book. I've got a publisher contacted me and asked me to write a book about Xinjiang. So it's not political. They don't want anything political in it. They don't want all the negativity about it. They want my experience.
This will be English or Chinese?
In English. They may translate it into Chinese. I'm quite functional at Chinese, but writing a book, doing interviews, I'd rather not do an interview in Chinese.
No, I mean translate it. You know, whether
it may be translated. I don't know yet. Yeah. We haven't even got as far as discussing fees or costs, or I want to go back and do a few different things. I've given them an outline. I've given them what I want to do. I want them to fund me, or at least advance me, or make sure that my costs are recoverable for some trips. I don't mind paying for my own trips, but if I'm going to do this for a publisher who wants me to put it together, then I'm hoping that they'll pay for it as well. So editorial freedom is a guarantee, but they have actually said we would like this to be more travelogue than political. So that's okay. I can do that, I think. But I think there has to be at least one short chapter to cover some of the issues. You can't just write a book about Xinjiang and pretend nothing's ever happened there, because there has been things happening there. And I'd like to cover the reality rather than the myths of the genocide and the incarcerations and the suppression and oppression.
It's crazy, like there's still people, today on social media saying, "Oh, Eileen Gu, why doesn't she say anything about Uyghur genocide? While she has a pedestal." It's like. Okay, let's just even assume. Let's even assume that's even true. The Uyghur genocide is even true. Do you know how many if every time an American athlete would have to ask about American atrocities, there will be no more competition, because that will take up all the time. Because this is ridiculous. That's so ridiculous. But and Eileen Gu just said, okay, I can't speak on the issue because I'm not expert, I'm not educated on it, so I cannot comment it on it, which is a perfectly neutral answer. But as a person that have actually been to Xinjiang, driving 35,000 kilometers all around southern Xinjiang, I can say I definitely did not see any Uyghur genocide. I see Uyghurs on the streets of Kashgar, on the street of Khotan Turpan, walking everywhere, enjoying their daily lives. You see, like, I do not to compare, to say this is somehow the same as what Israel is doing in Gaza. This is just a blatant lie.
Exactly. Scorched earth policy in Gaza. All they're doing in Xinjiang is building. That in December last year, CCTV 4 took my wife and I to Hotan and Ala-Ur, the two cities on either end of the Taklamakan Desert. And what a great experience. They rented bikes for us, and we cycled the G580.
You cycled through the Taklamakan Desert. That's the same route we drove through, but we were in the Toyota Land Cruiser. But wow, I mean, how long did it take you?
We didn't cycle all the way. They had a deadline. Okay. I'd love to have. It's 480 kilometers. It would have taken at least 3 and probably 4 days. Actually, probably 5 days to do. And there are 2 stopping points in the desert. So we would have been able. There's no hotels. We would have been able to camp where there were shops and food and service stations and on 2 nights, but we would have been desert camping. So basically, what we did, they wanted us cycling. We would have loved to have cycled the whole journey, but what they did was they picked us up in Ala-Ur. We flew into Ala-Ur, which is Altai, I think.
The start.
It's
a northern.
Yeah. So we flew into there, and they had bikes ready for us, which we met them at the airport actually, and then went to the hotel together.
Oh, you guys probably flew into Kucha. I think Kucha.
No, we actually flew into Ala-Ur. It has its own airport.
Oh, it has its own airport. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There are 28 airports in Xinjiang now. 28.
That's a thing that really surprised me. We went to Tashkurgan, a town of like maybe 50,000 local residents, and they have an airport. They have an international airport that flies to Islamabad, which is crazy.
There you go. Yeah. My wife was in Kucha last year as well. She went there to accept an award. We've got we have Silk Road Friendship Ambassadors because of the work that we've done related to Xinjiang. So I didn't get to Kucha, so that's part of my next plan to go there.
I highly recommend. I've
been to Satcher, which is near Kashgar, and it's very, very similar, I'm told. Satcher is 93% Uyghur population. Ala-Ur, on the other hand, is about 85% Han. It's a new city that the Xinjiang Production Corps has built up. It has a massive university. This is where they're basing all of the reforestation through this university there in the desert, that area. We were put into a van, a comfortable van, like a 7-seater, with the bikes in the back, and then driven to the beginning of the road where we started the journey and were filmed, and we rode 20 kilometers or so, then put in the van and then driven another, because there's actually nothing changes for 100 kilometers. You've seen this, it's just sand dunes. So they drove us to the next point where there's something of interest. And then we got out of the van and we rode again and then did 20 kilometers or so. We actually only did about 100 kilometers, and it took us
only 100 kilometers. I only cycle 100 kilometers.
Well, we left the hotel at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we got into Hotan about 9 p.m. that same day. Wow. So we had several stops. I think there's 5 different stops where we did some filming, did some cycling. And it was a joy to ride through there, but it was freezing cold. It was like minus 10 degrees. So it was a bit cold, but we had the gear. They bought us all the gear, and we still got it. We got to keep the gear. The bike I was using was superb, and apparently it belonged to the shop owner where they'd rented it. It was his personal bike. It was a fantastic bike. So I was riding a very, very high quality bike, which is something I don't normally do. But yeah, it was fantastic. It was a great experience, and we met up with people who were involved in the reforestation. re-greening, de-desertification program. And I've got a lot of information. I can't write about this yet because they're making a video, and the video will come out. So I can't really. I can talk about it, but I can't really go public with a video of my experience because that's their video, not mine.
Nice. Okay, if people want to get in touch with you or want to follow you on social media, where would they go, Jerry?
Well, Jerry's Take on China is my YouTube, and I had my X account hacked, gone. Jerry's Take on China has gone now, and it belongs to somebody else, and it's being used by someone else. It's being used by someone called Angela Langhorne, but I still have China Untraveled on X, which is actually it's larger. That's got about 90,000 followers. And anybody who wants to contact me, my email is in the bio. I have no trouble with responding to emails. So people can contact me and say, hey, but what about? And I'll happily answer them.
Well, thank you again, Jerry, for making your time to speak to us. It's always interesting to talk about your China travel stories.
Thanks.
I told you I live vicariously through you. You're living my dream. Cycling across China. That was my dream since I don't know, since when I was in high school or something.
But well, I didn't do it until my first ride. I was 55 years old. So you got plenty of time.
I still have like 6 years. I'm 49 now, so I have 6 years.
Yeah.
Start.
But you still have young kids. Your boys will be. You need to get them off your hands first. So wait until they're 18 or 20. They go off to college, and then you can go and do it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jerry.
All right, Carl. Thank you.
For our audience, thank you for tuning in. Until next time. Bye bye.